year ago. I did all the research and gave you that
Jerry, we're on?
postcard.
Okay. Hey, good morning, everybody. Today is October 1st, and welcome to our Board of Trustees work session. So before we get started, I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, so we're going to start off with public comments this morning. Is there anybody here who, I don't see anybody I don't know, so if there is anybody who wants to address, please step up. If not, we'll move on to Hugh King, first up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I take this down?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Remember last time I gave all the board members questions? The whole idea of these questions, of course, is to learn, not to trick people, okay? So I think we'll start with Trustee Brown. I asked you to investigate the history of the flagpole. Mm-hmm. What'd you come up with?
Well, with some research, I found that there were 3 flagpoles at the Village Green in the vicinity of the location of the current pole. The first pole was struck by lightning, and then following that in 1926, the family of George Lodowick McAlpin donated a new flagpole that was wooden, and that came down in a windstorm.
Wow.
And a high wind took the wooden pole down, and upon some research, they found that the base of the pole had some dry rot and so forth. So then, following that, in 1949, they decided to use a steel pole, and that's what we have today, and it still stands. It was July 4th, 1949, and the plaque that was on the second flagpole is still on the flagpole. We just affixed it to the new flagpole, and there's a guarantee of 100 years for this flagpole, Hugh.
Oh.
And it was erected in 1949, so we'll have to mark our calendars at the village for a new one.
You can mark yours,
I
Trustee
won't be my
Brown.
problem either, Hugh.
Well, where did you find this information?
With a lot of research and digging, so I hand it to you and our historian, Bob Hefner, and the papers. But the New York historic newspapers, I was able to find the Star, and going through that, scrolling.
I'm going to tell the board members where you can find some information after this. Okay, Mayor Larson, you were asked to find out, there was the first mayor that we ever had another very important job before he became mayor.
Yes, so Jonathan Baker, who was our first mayor in 1920, correct?
Correct?
In 1918, he held the position of the Suffolk County Superintendent of the Poor.
I didn't know that.
Is that not the right answer?
No, that's an answer. Wow. No, the answer I had was in 1880, Jonathan Baker was elected supervisor of the town of East Hampton at 23 years of age. And then, 40 years later, he gets elected mayor.
Yeah, in 1918, he was the superintendent
Wow, I
of
didn't
the
know that
poor,
one.
which actually was taking care of the poor children of the county.
Where did you get that information?
The Star,
From the
East Hampton
Star,
Star,
yeah,
through the
yeah.
library.
To the library. Wow, I didn't know that one. And you know, Jonathan Baker was elected the first mayor, and then 2 years later, he was gone. He only lasted 2 years. Okay, but he was a supervisor. Okay, Trustee Minardi, you were going to talk about Main Beach?
Okay, Mr. Austin Culver offered the village a lot where Main Beach sits in 1932 for $35,000. The village said no. Then in 1935, he offered the same lot to the village for $24,000. The village said no. Then in an election on May 15th, 1937, the village purchased Main Beach for $20,000 from Mr. Austin Culver. The vote was 83 to 77. 5 of the votes were spoiled and 2 were blank, so could have gone either way.
That's right. Can you imagine if the village didn't have that now? Huh? Wow, thank you. Where did you find this information?
A combination of Suffolk County records, the library, and downstairs, not downstairs, Village Hall, and yeah, those places.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Trustee Graham, Frederick Gallatin.
Well, Frederick Allen, in addition to being one of the founders of the Maidstone Club, I found out and was surprised that he bought part of the Franklin Farm, and they donated the family ox pasture of the Franklin Farm to the town, which has become Maidstone Park.
Maidstone Park was the first town park.
All right, that was in 1911.
Right. Yes.
Google is my friend.
Google is your friend. You know, in 1911 or 10, when the town voted to purchase Maidstone Park for $1 from the Gallatins, they also could have bought the entire Northwest as a forest reservation for $20 an acre. And they said no. Well, how our place would have changed if that happened, huh? Okay, thank you. And the last is Trustee Melendez,
Yes.
Newtown Lane.
Yeah, there was Main Street and James Lane used to be called town streets. So when they started developing in 1700 towards what is now Newtown Lane, there were new homes, new parcels, so that's how it got its name.
It's the Newtown Lane, that's exactly right. Where did you find your information?
A lot of Google and a little bit of help.
A little bit. All right, I'm going to tell you one other place where you can find lots of information. In 1998, the village, through Assemblyman Thiel, got a $10,000 grant, and former historic site director Averill Geis did a compilation of the the village records from 1920 to 1999. Now, as Averill said, they need to be edited and they're not complete. But you can find a copy of that in the library adjacent to the mayor's office. It's about 897 pages, but there's a lot of information in there about the village. Okay, so you can go there and get it. Okay, thank you for doing this. Thank you. And now the next time, I know you have a lot to do at the next meeting, so I'm just going to come and talk about a little history of how the village started at the beginning of the meeting, and then the following meeting, you'll be able to ask me questions, okay? So thank you.
Thank you, Hugh.
Yeah.
All right, next up is a presentation from our accounting consultant, Joe Duda.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you didn't ask me a question, Mr. King. I would have been kind of lost there. Maybe next time, thanks. Good morning, everyone. I'm Joe Duda. I see a lot of new faces here today. I'm Joe Duda of Duda Actuarial Consulting, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning. I've been engaged by the village to perform GASB 75 services for the post-retirement medical benefits that you currently provide to your retirees and future retirees. And everybody should have a copy in your packet of the Village of East Hampton. Looks like this, GASB 75 actual evaluation as of August 1st, 2019. Now, this covers the period 8/1/19 to 7/31/20. So the exhibits towards the back of the report are the exhibits that the auditor will use to complete your financial statements. And we have to do this valuation once every 2 years. Okay, so I was here 2 years ago. And then the next one's going to be 8/1/2021. But in the interim year, we still have to provide information to the auditor or schedules about the unfunded actual accrued liability. So without further ado, I'm just going to go through some of the salient exhibits in the report. Right after the cover letter to Becky, you'll see Village of East Hampton OPEB plan actuarially determined contribution. Okay, this is as of 8/1/19. It's right after the cover letter. You'll see in our evaluation, we had 86 actives. Now, this was a snapshot as of 8/1/19 and 48 retirees. So we had total participants of 134. And then you'll see the net OPEB liability. OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. So we're trying to determine how much has been accrued as of the date of the valuation. As you can see, it's just about 20 million, 19,660,908 to be exact. Now, up at the top, this is kind of an interesting number, actuarially determined contribution. If you were to fund the benefit, okay, like you do with your pension plan, what I'm saying is based on the assumptions, it would be about 1.4 million. You're currently making about $700,000 of benefit payments. So if you were to set up a trust, which you can't, it's my understanding you can't do this under New York state law, but if you were, 1.4 million would be necessary to fund these post-retirement medical benefits. So the total, this is as of 8/1/19. Okay, if you go back a couple of pages, section 1 says expected net payments in the future, and these are claims that we expect for the next 15 years, and this is based on a closed population with no new entrants. And as you can see, it's roughly for the prior fiscal year, which is 8/1/19 to 7/31/20, it's about 814,000. And it's relatively static. It goes up to about 1 million, but it's kind of remaining level, which is a good thing to see. And if you go to the next page, your liability, once again, with the closed group, no new entrants, we're staying in around the $19 million range, which is also a nice thing to see. Sometimes you see these things spike, in other municipalities, but this is what we have in our 15-year projection. Now, these calculations were at a 3.5% interest rate. And as I indicated on the memorandum, interest rates have fallen dramatically in the prior fiscal year. Matter of fact, in your case, went from 3.5% down to 2.21, which is a decrease of more than 1.25%. So the idea here is if you use a lower interest rate to value the benefit, you have a higher liability. So you're going to see that as of 6/30/20, the liability is much higher. And we're required to use an interest rate which is similar to a AA municipal bond index if you are not funded. Okay, so this is happening all across America right now, with these audits, and I do a lot of school districts that have a June 30th fiscal year, and the numbers have increased, dramatically. So, but this is as of 8/1/19. Now, if you go to the next page, you'll see we have the eligibility requirements. First, on page 3, we have the PBA, and as you can see at the bottom, as of June 17th, 2016, any PBA, they get post-retirement medical benefits for life, but any PBA member hired after that date is required to contribute 15% of the health insurance premium paid by the village. Over on page 4, we have the non-uniform eligibility requirements, and as you can see at the bottom, any elected official appointed or elected after January 1st, 2017 shall be required to contribute 15% of the cost not to exceed 3% of base salary. So that's all been all factored into my calculations. And non-contract employees, similar thing, 15% of the premium not to exceed 3% of gross salary. So what we're doing here, if you go beyond the other exhibits and go to section 7, okay, it looks like this. It's an Excel sheet, section 7. These are the calculations as of July 31st, 2020. And as you can see, the liability increased dramatically. It's, as of July 31st, 2020, it's $23,634,771. Now, that's at the 2.21% interest rate. What I showed you earlier was at 3.5. So you see the gravity of what we're talking about? So if interest rates increase, that number, of course, will come down, but hopefully it won't go higher if interest rates go lower. But I think we're looking, at last look, I think the interest rate is somewhere around 2. So it has dropped a little bit, but it's not like a 0.5%. This is a AA municipal bond index. So right below that, you'll see the impact, okay, of a +1 and -1% on the liability. So for the current discount rate, of course, the number's 23.6 million, but if interest rates go to 1.21%, then it's 27.3. So as you can see, it spikes up quite a bit. If it increases to 3.21%, then it goes down. It's an inverse relationship to 20.6. Likewise, we have to provide for the auditor, and this is all going to be in your financial statements. You're going to see this when the auditor has completed their work. We also have to do +1 and -1% on the medical inflation rate. And as you can see, the current, if we go down 1%, it goes down to 20.2 million. If we go up 1%, it goes up to 27.8. Okay, so that's the gravity of the medical inflation rate. The last exhibit I want to talk about, and then I'll entertain whatever questions you might have, is on the next page, the schedule of changes in the plan's OPEB liability as of 7/31/2020. We start off with service cost. Service cost at $304,000. All active employees are accruing a benefit or accruing a contribution, okay, for the current year to get that post-retirement medical benefit, and that's what $304,000 represents. We have interest on the liability. That's at $672,000. Now, the difference is expected in actual. You see it's a real big number, $4.4 million. That pretty much is the drop in the interest rate that I talked about earlier. Okay. We had a change in assumption. I actually lowered the medical inflation rate, by the way, to, as you can see underneath, the methods and assumptions, 6.5% increase in the first year, decreasing by 0.5% to an ultimate rate of 5%. So I did lower that. I think you were at 7.5 in that first year, so I did bring that down a bit. So I saved about $335,000, as you can see. And then, of course, we had benefit payments of $704,000. So that reconciles, off your audit. From last year, you had $19.2 million, and now you have $23.6. You can see the assumptions at the bottom. The retirement age, I use rates commensurate with what the New York State retirement system is using to value your pension plan. The mortality, I'm using a mortality table from 2000, and I'm projecting it with improvement to 2021. Okay, which the good news for today is everybody's living longer, but the bad news is you have to pay for it. That pretty much is the cliff notes of my report. I know you have a lot of important business on your agenda. Are there any questions or comments?
I'll just jump in quickly, and thank you, Joe. Each year you do this report for us.
Thank you, Becky.
When Joe mentions that this is an unfunded liability, and he is correct, the New York State law does not allow a local government to set up any type of reserve fund to offset any OPEB benefit that the village is liable for. That being said, the village annually fully funds their health insurance for all active and retiree members in the operating budget every year. So the village has never had any issue or concern as far as funding any of the benefits due to active or retired employees and any of their dependents. So.
But it's a very big liability. It's a big number, and I know, when you go to borrow money, like if you want to, get a bond, you have a project. They do look at this. They'll look at this on your financial statement, and they'll ask you about it, and it really does matter. So a lot of municipalities, what they're doing going forward is they're looking to maybe for new hires, maybe limit the benefit or cut back. There's a lot of things going on, but as you can see, it's a pretty substantial number. And I come here once every 2 years to give you, a synopsis of what's happening here. And with the interest rate dropping, it even becomes larger. So anyway, any other questions or comments? Really, it's tough talking with this on. My glasses were steaming.
I know. Well, thank
pretty
you very
rough.
much.
Thank you
Thanks.
once again for the opportunity. I've been providing service for the village for 12 years, and we do thank you at Due to Actuarial Consulting. Thanks again.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up is Mike Volker, the Deputy Superintendent, is going to tell us about stormwater.
Good morning, everybody. How are you doing today?
Good, Mike.
To be really brief, I sent you all a memo, a lot of new members, so let you know what we do. We've been doing this program since, about 12 years ago. This comes down from the Clean Water Act established by the EPA back in the 70s. It finally made its way down to us. Our program is complete. We've installed an approved retrofit plan by the DEC, and we're now in the maintenance phase. Let me look at my notes real quick. We're in compliance with our MS4 permit. However, it has been 10 years, and we should probably consider reviewing the plan sometime this fall and winter, make sure we're doing what we want to do. And there's new technologies and there's new information out there. And also like to get new feedback from the board on what our program is. It's very small. It just covers the Cove Hollow corridor and the Georgia Cove. The rest of the Georgia Pond is under the jurisdiction of the town or the trustees. One of the things we got to work on also is public outreach. That's part of the plan. With the new COVID, we got to figure out new ideas to reach out to various groups. In the past, we've talked to school groups and civic organizations, and we just have to move forward with that to continue that aspect of the program. We have partnerships with some stakeholder groups. I know Becky coordinates with the Friends of Georgia. We've relied on them in the past. Dr. Gobler's given us some information through his reports, which we've used in our annual reports we submit to the DEC. We are required to do that every year. There's due every May 3rd, I believe, and we get that in. We've been on time and in compliance with those since we started the program. Finally, I would end that as moving forward, we do need to address some issues like there's equipment that we do need to maintain these infrastructures. That would only benefit that area. It would be good for all of our stormwater, storm drains, storage basins. And we look forward to keeping this program going and keeping it in compliance. And that's all I have to say. Does anyone have any questions?
I just have a comment.
Sure.
In your report, Mike, you mentioned that some of the cleaning and replacement of the filters, on the storm drains has become challenging as the village no longer has a vac truck to clean the structures and must perform the work
True.
manually. We haven't had a vac truck in over a year, to my knowledge.
Over 2 years, yes.
Over 2 years.
So-
And I know that you're looking at a sweeper that would also handle that aspect of it.
Yes.
As well as, what we all know, the sweeper cleans up the litter and the debris from the streets, but also picks up any gasoline, metals, pollutants before it reaches the storm drains.
Correct.
Before it
Yep,
reaches our
sediments,
ponds.
sticks, yes.
And it's really basic water quality 101. And, I'm optimistic because this board really seems receptive to the needs of DPW and the essential equipment that you need. So going forward, I'm optimistic that, and I've been advocating, as you all know, for many months to put the resources into DPW to bring it up to par, especially essential equipment such as the sweeper, the VACOL truck, garbage truck, and so forth. And as I said, the majority of the will of the board in the past, it wasn't a priority, but I know this board going forward, it is. So.
Okay, well, we would appreciate any help we can.
Yeah, we could actually, if Sandra wants to tell you about yesterday, they had the sweeper come out and did another demonstration. I wasn't there, but Sandra, if you want to tell us about that real quick.
We loved it. It's something that we need. I saw how it works, all the functions, everything that's going to help with. So we're really excited that we're going to get this sweeper. We're working to get it, and hopefully the board, like Rose said, we're all on board to helping DPW. That's
we would
one of our main
appreciate it.
concerns, getting this village where it has to go.
Okay, thank you.
As you know, Mike, I also was involved when we demoed that machine about a year ago. And it's very impressive, and it can do a multiple variety of tasks. So that also makes it, more something that could be important for the village.
Okay, anything else, folks?
No, that's it. Thanks, Mike.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, so next up is Becky. She's going to update us on a health insurance proposal.
I am proposing to the Board of Trustees, and the timeliness works out with the GASB 75 report that you just received, that the Village Board of Trustees proposed a health insurance opt-out for non-union employees, which is where you would have to start. Any other program would be subject to negotiation by the unions. But as Joe reported in the GASB 75, the village's increasing long-term liability health insurance does not go down. And one of the benefits that an opt-out would provide is you are providing an employee with an annual stipend as long as they can prove that they have either same or comparable coverage health insurance either through a spouse or a domestic partner, that they would decline enrollment into the village's health insurance program, thereby that either themselves or their family not being a member of the village's plan. Then you do not have that long-term liability as funding that retiree and any surviving spouse in their retirement. You have a chart that shows comparisons of neighboring municipalities that offer the opt-out. You also see, I provided with you the rates that the village currently pays. We pay health insurance on a calendar year. So you see what currently the village pays annually and monthly for single and family plans. And if you jump down to the next part, employee contributions, the reason it is broken down into two separate sections is because with the new fiscal year, it has to be recalculated based on an employee's new salary. And then the total 1920 budget NISHIP expenditure was just about $2.8 million. And again, that is active and for retirees. So if the board is receptive to this proposal, I would recommend doing a survey to employees to see who would want to opt into it, and then I can do a more detailed cost analysis as far as what the savings would actually be to the village moving forward.
Anyone?
I think it's a good idea. I think we should go ahead with this. And, at least survey the employees to find out what they think about it.
Okay.
And also the PBA and the dispatchers as
Sure,
well.
yep.
It seems like a win-win for everyone. The employee, if your spouse or domestic partner has a health insurance, and you could opt out and get a stipend, that seems, and it's at a tremendous savings for the village if they do so. As we know, a single plan is $12,000, and roughly for a family is $28,000. So even if we offer a stipend, as many other municipalities do, of $2,000 or whatever, we'll have to decide that. It's a considerable savings, potentially.
It is, and it's a nice benefit for the employee, too, so.
Absolutely.
Look at Quag. Quag,
Quads is
quite a bit
done
of money.
based on the amount of the health insurance premium less the 15% of the employee's contribution, and then it's 50% of that is the stipend that they receive.
okay.
Everyone else is at a flat amount.
All right, yeah, let's move forward then.
Okay, so
That sounds
we
great.
can work on a survey for the employees and, like I said, get a better idea on some actual savings. Okay.
Thanks. Okay, Chief Tracy. It's a long list. I don't believe you're allowed to take it off, Chief.
Good morning. I'd like to just make a brief announcement, if I could, regarding Halloween, which is coming up rapidly. We got a notice from the CDC regarding potential large gathering dangers that are involved very often with Halloween. And in the past several years, the village police has cordoned off roads in the village to encourage safe Halloween trick-or-treating without the hazard of motor vehicle accidents, pedestrian accidents. Unfortunately, this year, we're going to be unable to do that. So what we are doing to notify the parents and the children and the young folks in the schools, we're sending out a letter to the school systems alerting them to the fact that we will not be shutting down roads in the village core district for Halloween trick-or-treating. The area that I'm speaking of is Newtown Lane and Osborne, Newtown and Sherrill, and Cooper, McGurk. That whole area from McGurk to Osborne has largely been without vehicle traffic, and it has caused over the years a great gathering place for young people, parents, and trick-or-treating, but this year we're just not going to be able to do that in a safe manner. Police will be out patrolling that area on foot, bicycle. We'll have a presence there, but we will be discouraging large gatherings in that area, obviously for the health risk. In addition to putting out this message to the schools and to the parents, we're going to hand deliver a letter to the residents, the buildings, and that are involved in that area, so people know in advance that it will not be business as usual Halloween night. So we thought that would be prudent and the safe thing to do, and that's well underway. Regarding the parking suggestions that we have, there's a number of them, and I'll go.
Excuse me, Chief, can I ask you a question about Halloween? There are several of us, 2 of us on this board that live in Ground Zero for that.
Right.
Is the police department advocating for us not to accept trick-or-treaters?
No, we're not going as far as that, telling people exactly what they can and can't do with candy and so forth, but we're discouraging mass gatherings or large gatherings or things that would bring a large group of people to your property at one time. So our hope is that people, should people be out there trick-or-treating, that they move through the area and move on. And as opposed to previous years where we've had, I'm going to say upwards of 1,000 people gathered in a very small amount of space.
Yeah, I believe that the governor is allowing trick-or-treating, but our problem is we've created this safe zone in the past, which has turned out to be terrific.
Right.
However, with the coronavirus, it's just now corralling people and causing people to violate the other orders of the governor, and so that's, I mean, really ask people to trick-or-treat in their own neighborhoods probably would be the best thing to do at this point.
In a normal year, we give out about 2,000 pieces of candy at our house. And I think that maybe what we're going to do is we're going to have a limited amount of candy for the little kids that come first, and then shut it down before, nightfall.
Do we know what the other areas are doing? For example, last year, because the weather was indecisive, the Montauk area, which is near Camp Hero, they closed. We saw a huge increase last year because of that. So my concern would be, is if everyone closes, people are all going to come to the one place that they know. And the one place that they know is our little area, as Tiger mentioned.
Right.
And so,
But that's why we're sending it out to all the
of
local
course,
schools. We're
of
doing
course.
all the
Yeah.
school districts through the parent, emails. We're going to be publicizing
Right.
it, website, to the media, letters to the editor, to ask those school districts to get the word out in their own communities, reaching out to Chief Sarlo as well, so he
Right.
knows, what the village is planning. So that's why we're starting this
perfect.
early.
I mean, my only, I guess, concern, I mean, I've been in grounds, I mean, we give out 10,000 pieces of candy. I mean, it's
We
a
let 'em take
mob.
one.
And I'm just concerned that the people still show up and there's cars on the road.
Well, the
Because
police are
then-
still going to be down there. I mean, it's just no one's going to not
No,
be,
but
yeah.
you know what I'm trying to say
Yeah.
is that
So that there isn't
we
gathering.
can do everything we can to try to minimize it. But what if there's hundreds of kids on the street and cars? Then we got like an even worse problem. 'Cause, that's my only concern.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're gonna.
I agree with
We're
everything
gonna
that
limit
we're
the
doing.
parking on Newtown Lane as well. We have temporary parking signs that'll go up, and we're gonna Newtown on both sides is really where the bulk of the people have been parking, and we're gonna have to restrict that. So
Of
we're
course.
prepared to do that.
Again, I agree
and we'll keep
with
them
this,
moving as best we
but
can.
I'm just concerned that other places are going to close down, and the village residents that spend a lot of time and money over the past decades of building up this area are going to get inundated because no one else is going to do it. And so that's my only concern. And again, it's not a concern that I want it or I don't want it. It's just a concern of, oh my God, all these kids are here, and now their cars as well going up and down the street. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, we've had people as far away as Patchogue.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I think that maybe if we do a little bit more than just send a letter around to the school districts, I mean, maybe tell Newsday that we're not gonna be business as usual in the village?
We can do that, sure.
Is there a contingency plan? Like, I know that the police have been great. They're on bicycles, they're on foot. We see them all, in and out. Is there a plan to shut the streets down if it's that bad? Like, could there be a backup plan? Because again, it's not about the people, it's about getting hit by a car.
Yeah, you wouldn't shut the streets down if you had a large influx coming into that Newtown area. You could divert traffic up Railroad and basically push traffic away. That would be a last resort. But we'll have the manpower to adapt as needed. So we fully staff that evening. So we'll be there regardless, and then we'll adapt as the situation changes.
Yeah.
Okay, on the parking, I have as we said, a lengthy list. And I'll start with no parking. Middle Lane, we're proposing no parking on Middle Lane from the intersection of Cross Highway on both sides to its intersection with Egypt Lane. And as we know, that road has become very narrow. It's always been narrow, but as the sides of the road and the shoulders have changed, it is narrowed to 14 feet wide in some areas. So there's literally no room for anyone to park on that road without causing significant traffic impact. On Egypt Lane, we're proposing a no parking area on Egypt on both sides from the intersection of Egypt Lane and Fithian, north to the intersection of Egypt Lane and Pandago Road, Route 27. The logic behind that is that both sides of that road are now curbed. There is no shoulder. And just right before this meeting several days ago, I went down there with one of the sergeants, and I stood there and I videotaped traffic going back and forth. And we had a vehicle park on the east side of Egypt. And because that vehicle was parked there, the traffic heading towards the post office needed to go right in the opposite lane entirely, head-on, with the traffic that was exiting Gay Lane. So it's been coming for a while, the need, but as the traffic increases during the summer season, more and more people seem to be pulling over there. In addition, once that legislation, should it pass and go into law, we'll be pushing construction vehicles and landscaping vehicles out of that area because it's just not a safe situation. There's a typo on the next one. It's repeated down below, and it's Church Street. This is the correct wording. We're proposing on the east side of Church Street from the intersection of Route 114, Buell Lane, 495 feet north to the border of the John H. Marshall Elementary School property, a no parking zone. The area along Church, in that particular area, we've had a number of complaints from property owners that live adjacent to that intersection, and we've got an issue that we're currently working on with some speed on 114, but along that one stretch, we're suggesting a no parking zone. There's adequate parking across the street in a large parking lot, which should absorb this change. Further on Church Street, because we've had a recent change in the flow of traffic at the John Marshall School, the John Marshall School is now using, because of COVID, the Church Street entrance and exit road, which it was not originally designed for. They're using that as an egress during the school day, so it's our suggestion that we implement a 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday no parking zone on the east side of Church from the southern property line of the John Marshall School, which is exactly where the other no parking zone would end, all the way to Medway. That is on the east side of the road, and it's the side with the poles. So during the school day, people would not park there because of the line of sight and so forth and the traffic. But afterwards, in the evening and on weekends, the residents would be able to park there. There are some folks in that area that have very small driveways and so forth, so they would still be allowed to put their cars over there, just not during school hours. The next area I have is Race Lane. Currently, there's a no parking zone from the intersection of Race Lane and Railroad Avenue, and it extends a certain distance in a southerly direction. What I'm proposing is that we enlarge that slightly so it encompasses the driveway area of the stores that are along that stretch. There's a line of sight issue. So the proposal would be that there would be no parking on the west side of Race Lane from the intersection of Railroad Avenue, extending to a point 195 feet south. That would eliminate one spot on the side of that driveway, which is currently blinding people trying to pull out. And then another small area on Race Lane, because of complaints from the business owners, we're proposing to implement a 30-minute parking zone from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the west side of Race, which is the same point we just discussed, to a point 195 feet south of the intersection of Railroad Avenue, to a point 145 feet to the entrance of 31 Race Lane, which is the restaurant. The reason we're proposing 30-minute is for the operations of the businesses during the day. The reason we're ending it at 6 p.m. is so that the restaurant business there can then utilize the spots previously used by the day operations of those businesses. On Newtown Lane, we're proposing on the north side, beginning at Osborne Lane, continuing in a westerly direction to the Long Island Railroad tracks, a change from 1-hour parking to 2-hour parking. In that area and along that stretch, there are several businesses which their patrons are in excess of 1 hour normally. 2 of them are barbershop / beauty salon businesses, and another one is a business where there's consulting done and so forth. And that also, there was interest in that area also because of the limit in the parking lot across the way on Osborne. So the how busy that parking lot remains is right now is uncertain, but it does open up a little bit of, gives a little bit of a help to those businesses in that area. And on James Lane, to change the wording, a proposal to change the wording on the time limit on James Lane. As many of you know, the area adjacent to the pond there, in the winter, there's often people ice skating, not so much as in the past, people feeding the ducks and so forth. But we're proposing to change the 2-hour limit there to 30 minutes, and those are the spots adjacent to Town Pond. And this is a seasonal restriction. It's currently in place seasonally for, I think it's originally intended to keep people from parking there and walking to the beach all day. But we're proposing it go to 30 minutes, and then, of course, in the winter, it would revert back to longer times for the winter. And we have a turning restriction suggestion. On Pleasant Lane, we currently have a no left turn on Pleasant Lane out onto Newtown. It's our suggestion that we make that a right turn only, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. That time is to coincide with the operation of the delicatessen and food business, which is extremely busy in the summer. We don't want anybody pulling out of there and making a left and hitting somebody near that crosswalk. Another point of discussion with this particular proposal may be, and I need to talk to the highway superintendent about this, get his input. If need be, we would look at and ask the superintendent to look at moving that crosswalk slightly to the west. But that's an area outside my expertise, and I would defer to Superintendent Collins. On Mill Road, and I know this was a subject of discussion in the past, we're proposing a one-way traffic on Mill Road, one direction only, westerly, from James Lane to Route 27, Main Street. And again, some of the discussion in the past on that centered around accidents. The accident level is not really that high at that spot, but it is a tremendous backup to traffic when people going west stop. They avoid the flagpole, they go past the flagpole where they can turn left to go to the beach, and instead they go straight, and they stop in traffic and they try to turn left there. And obviously they're foiled by the intense traffic in the summer. So it's our view that that may be a way to get rid of that backlog of traffic to the pole by making that one way. And finally, Cove Hollow Road, Many years ago, there was a no parking restriction put in on both sides of Cove Hollow when, at the time when there was a nightclub and restaurant on the highway, which backed up right onto Cove Hollow. And this suggestion came with the blessing of Superintendent Collins. Remove section 267-4-47, which reads as follows: no parking permitted on both sides of Cove Hollow Road from the southerly intersection of New York State Route 27 Montauk Highway, southwesterly 375 feet. So it's our position that we should enact the legislation to remove those no parking areas, and that would be some help to the residents that live in that area too, that they'd be able to park on the shoulder. There's adequate shoulder on both sides. And that's all I have on the for now. I'm sure more will come as we take a close look at the traffic flows and the width of our roads, but that's all I have for today.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add the Church Street on the easterly side. The reason the chief and I were looking at it and we chose the east side of the road was because there's already telephone poles there. So we wouldn't have to erect less no parking signs. We could utilize the telephone poles that are already there, so we have less ugly signs, is the easiest way to say it. So we thought that was good. And the only thing on in front of Mary's Marvelous is I'd be a little concerned about moving the crosswalk any further west, because people roll through that stop sign off of Railroad to try to beat the traffic coming from the school, and they're really not looking to their right, they're only looking to the left. So to move the crosswalk closer, they're gonna have less time to stop. That would be my only problems.
Yeah, Chief, I have a question for you. On the Mill Road, would that then entail removing the stop signs on James Lane?
Yeah, no, we hadn't proposed that right now, but that would be something that
I mean, that was the reason we
should be
put
under
them in.
consideration, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, they
to
would have to come
safeguard
out.
that intersection.
It's up to the board's discretion, but yeah, that'd be a logical sequence, right, Dave? Yeah.
That was really the whole idea of making that a one-way out, so we get rid of all those stop signs. Because you wouldn't have that conflict anymore, Tiger, because it
Right.
would be going out to Montauk Highway.
Yeah, I think that Father Brunel would probably prefer they stay because it cuts the speed down on the road and where he comes out, but, that's a subject for a public hearing, so.
Right. Okay.
I'm also in favor. You'll recall originally I wanted to pursue the one-way option going westerly on Mill Road. We were approached to consider, the line of sight issue of heading on Mill Road to James Lane. The line of sight is compromised. That's why we put the stop signs up. But I thought that if we made it one way going westerly towards Main Street, it would accomplish so many more things. Mill Road is a narrow road as well. Two cars can't pass, opposing traffic can't pass. I think at the widest, it's probably 10 or 12 feet perhaps at the culvert there. I don't think it was intended for the kind of traffic it's getting now. So certainly going one way in the westerly direction would help that. And as you point out, when you're on Main Street and you try to make that left, it's very difficult and traffic backs up, so that point will be.
Backs up all the way to the library or worse.
Yeah, that point will be, there was an accident there just in May with someone trying to make the left turn, someone trying to go around them. So that would be eliminated that issue as well.
And
So
we
I
had a
think it's
pedestrian
something-
accident there too.
I wasn't
Unfortunately,
aware of
wasn't
that, but
witness.
yeah, it's difficult, that left turn onto Mill Road. So I still maintain my position that that could be a viable option. We also heard from Drew Bennett at the time, who said that that was one of the options as well. So I'm
Great.
happy to see that it was revisited.
Anybody have anything else? Otherwise, we'll schedule them all for public hearings, Beth.
Thank you.
All right, so that concludes the work session portion. I guess now we'll enter into the regular board meeting. So if we can start with the resolutions.
Resolution number 1, approve the $65,824 proposal from Carter Malance for sidewalks and curb improvements at listed locations as per Department of Public Works Superintendent David Collins' September 9th memo with attachments.
Motion?
Make a motion to accept.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None, so carried. Next.
Number 2, accept zoning board member Christopher Minardi's resignation effective retroactively to September 16th, 2020.
So
I'll make
moved.
the motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chris is going to recuse himself, and passed and carried.
Number 3, approve pay adjustment for James Minardi lifeguard to $21 hourly effective retroactively to September 18th, 2020.
Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chris is going to recuse himself. Passed and carried.
Number 4, adopt resolution number 59-2020 to amend the 2019-2020 village budget to increase estimated revenue and appropriations for costs related to the refinancing of bonds issued in 2008 and 2013 as per resolution number 13-2020, authorizing the refinance of serial bonds, BAN.
So moved.
Second? Got it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, so carried. And we have one add-on.
Addendum number 1, adopt resolution number 60-2020 to approve special events permit for the East Hampton Farmers Market.
I think we should discuss this before we pass it.
Sure, go ahead.
You know, I just heard about this yesterday, and several things strike me about it. It doesn't seem to be so much of a farmer's market, you know, with a soap concession and a knife concession, and if it's going to be fruits and vegetables and things like that, that'd be great. But if it's going to be a kind of a craft fair sort of thing, I think that's a different kettle of fish. I think also the fact that they want to start it this Sunday is a little abrupt. And I think that the location in the corner of the parking lot is, you know, pretty impactful on what's going to be happening on a Sunday in the village. And I'm not so sure that I think that this is something that we should be doing, you know, just right away like this. I mean, we should, you know, I mean, have they thought about maybe putting it into Herrick Park by the softball field where it's not going to be as impactful on the stores? You know, I know the Cut Right Liquor Store does all of their business on the sidewalk now, and that would be right behind these tents. I'm not exactly sure how much of the parking lot is going to be taken up, and the little drawing we got, wasn't totally clear how much, you know, how many rows of parking. Obviously, it would be the row of parallel parking on the curb, and then at least 2 facing spots. And if they were to take away that next lane, the travel lane, parallel to the one by the sidewalk, that could really muck up the whole parking lot. And I just don't know that this has totally been thought out at this point. I mean, I'm not in favor, I mean, I'm not against having a farmer's market, but again, if we're also limited to gatherings of 50 people, this really has the earmarks of breaking that barrier with, you know, 15 vendors. I mean, if they have 2 people each, that's 30 people right there. Secondly, would we be setting up anything for contact tracing? If somebody were to get sick, we would need to know who's in the, who was present at the scene. I know that somebody told me that the farmer's market at Nick and Tony's has been moved to a larger location for the very reason of social distancing and, you know, keeping people away. I mean, I'm not against bringing people into the village. I mean, I am 100% for that. But I think that maybe this needs a little more thinking about. And, you know, perhaps the organizers can let us know what their plans are for COVID mitigation, how much actual parking it will do, what that would do to the traffic flow in the village. I noticed there was no mention of them defraying, no mention of them putting garbage cans around and taking care of trash. And, perhaps if we're going to need more police presence, I didn't see any mention of them paying for any of that. I think this is, and again, they're also saying that, when the Southampton market closes, they're going to bring those people in to the village as well. And also, I'm not sure what farmers' produce they're going to be selling on December 20th. So I think there's a little more needs to be talked about in this proposal than just to vote on it today and allow it to go forward.
I can answer most of those questions. First of all,
Use the mic, Sandra?
yeah.
It's hard to hear you.
So first of all, as you said, Nick and Tony's Farmers Market was moved. This is the Nick and Tony's Farmers Market. So it's not a fair, it's always been a farmers market. The reason they moved was not because they needed more space. It was because Nick and Tony's was doing takeout. So they needed a different space to do it. They know the regulations of COVID. That's why we have one way that the people are going to be walking by. If you see the drawing, we are leaving some space between the sidewalk and the tent, so there's space for everybody to walk freely in the sidewalks. All the COVID regulations have been already stated, and like I said, this is for bringing community in, getting our community to be, again, to get everybody to the village. We already spoke to the stores, everybody's excited about it, and we're a small village. If something doesn't work, we can talk to the farmers market and just fix it, but I think they're all in compliance, they're happy to be there, and I think it's good for the village to be done.
What about the garbage? Are there going to be extra garbage, or is there plenty of garbage receptacles?
We have garbage receptacles, and if we need to, their old pickup this is not something they haven't done. This is the same thing that was happening in Nick and Tony's every Friday. So they all know that they have to pick up and leave it the way they started. This is nothing new for them.
Okay, what about alternate locations? Did they look at Herrick Park?
We did walk some locations. We believe that for our purpose of bringing community together, that was the best location. But we can always, like I said, we're a small village. If we need to change something or go forward in a different location because this didn't work out, but I think this is the best location for the purpose that we wanted.
Can I just ask one question? There's active driveways in that corner by Cheetah and Blue Parrot, and in their drawing, that looks like they're blocking those off.
Yes.
Has that been okayed by Cheetah? I don't think, just be concerned about blocking off access
Yeah, I mean,
to the restaurants.
the police are going to set that up, so we'll make sure that that's clear.
I just wanted, they provided some additional information late last night and this morning, because you can see on the drawing in the parking lot where they're looking to set up the tents. We asked the question about, if your camera can't see, but on this other side of it, that there are parking spots where they're going to be providing a barrier where those other cars would be coming in, or that, what is the, how are those spots going to be handled? They have actually requested to use those spots for their vendors to park, to be able to keep, resupplying their tents as needed. So it's not just this area, it's also then they're going to be requesting. I asked for an updated plan, I haven't received it. So it's along this area here, and then they want to park here for their vendors. So those are additional spots that are being requested to use. As far as COVID, I did ask them, they said they are going to have people coming in one way, vendors, masks. I asked if they were limiting the number of people per tent at any one time. They said yes. However, they said we only plan to allow 50 people at one time. Obviously, that will have to be less, because that number has to include the number of people that are working there, that 50. So that will have to be less than what's allowed in there at one time.
And Becky, that will be the responsibility of the people who are running the farmer's
Yes,
market to monitor.
Yes,
the
they said
amount
that
of
they will be
people.
monitoring it, and I asked them that, yep. And I would, on their application, they didn't note anything about sanitary facilities, which is either bathroom or garbage. So I think, whether, we just need to make sure that that's noted on the application, because it's not.
Okay. Again, it's not prepared, I mean, it's food and vegetables and things that are being carried away, so it's not food that's being eaten there, and then there's gonna generate garbage. So I think it's all, like Sandra said, this is not their first farmer's market. This should be a pretty simple thing. I know Chief Tracy's got it, he's gonna have an officer down there or two, so I'm sure we'll make sure that everything is running smooth, traffic-wise, and also COVID-wise. So I certainly don't have an issue with trying it, and like Sandra said, if it doesn't work, we readjust for the following Sunday. If it's a traffic nightmare, then we readjust and we move it somewhere else for the following Sundays. But I don't see it as a problem. I'm willing to give it a shot. And does anybody have anything else before we put it up to a vote?
Trustee Melendez, I was gonna ask them after this meeting, but do you know, do they intend to put any signage up?
I don't think they will.
No?
I don't think they will, but
Right, how is this going to be publicized?
they were gonna do a website, they're gonna be doing the publicity, we don't have nothing to do with it.
No, I know, we don't have to do it, but I mean, are they going to put an ad in the paper or something like
I
that?
imagine they will.
Okay.
Or a local radio station, maybe, something like that.
Yeah, I don't want to be the stuck-in-the-mud guy on this, but,
Well, I encourage you to vote the way you want to vote.
yeah,
Tiger.
no, I mean, I'm not going to vote against it at this point, but I would like to modify it so that we do it, certainly this time, as a week-by-week. And the week-by-week can be, whether it's working or not, can be decided by the village administrator.
Well,
I mean,
we're passing a resolution that's going to allow it until December. So,
what's going on in December? On December 20th, what kind of produce do they have to sell?
Well, they're farms, so they do lettuces, they still have greenhouses to get things out there, and some other baked goods or things that you use for like reefs or stuff like that.
Yeah, I
so.
think the seafood shop had a tent, and there's a pickle tent, and
Yeah,
some of the
Yeah.
local
I mean-
stores, I believe, have tents, so it goes from the store to the tent, if I'm not mistaken. It's the same Nick and Tony's setup, just in a different location.
Exactly, it's the same people.
Okay, and I would also like to say that I don't want to see that corner of the parking lot set in stone either. If we want to move it someplace else, we can move it someplace else.
Like I said, if it doesn't work, we
Yeah.
can always sit with them and
Right.
talk to them. They're open to any changes we're willing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they don't want to put on an event that people don't like.
They have a name too, so they
Yeah.
want to protect it.
Okay.
Chief Tracy, you got something to add?
I was just going to say very quickly, I spoke with the organizers last night and I expressed some concerns and so forth. Very cooperative, I'm meeting with them, we're going to walk the site, we'll make some fine tune adjustments, visually set up so we can see how it's going to work. And, and very much so, if it doesn't work or if it's a traffic problem, they're willing to work with us. I let them know there may need to be some changes, we may have to move them, but I think they're fine with that, so, and we'll have the manpower to do it the best we can, set it up the best we can, so it doesn't impact the traffic too much.
Okay.
Again, all the store owners who were affected by it were approached, and no one seemed to have any issues with it, so.
That
Okay.
was my question, too. I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that all the businesses there in that vicinity were on board and, were excited about it. As Tiger mentioned, we didn't really have too much information, as of
It came together
today.
really
So,
fast, so.
A lot of my questions have been answered, too. And as you said, we can give it, we'll give it a try and monitor it on a week-to-week basis. And if we have to modify it, we have the ability to do so.
Exactly.
As far as the location. So.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve that.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. So carried. And that concludes our board meeting. We're going to adjourn and go into executive session about litigation, and then if we have to return, Jamie will call you. All right, well, thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great day. Jamie, this is a copy of that.